If you want to live a life of freedom and a life of ease, it's deeply important that we examine and look at our habits and recognize where we're behaving, reacting, responding or speaking in the world from a place of habitual conditioning. So a lot of the time we don't notice how we are in the world. We don't know what we're saying or why we're saying it, what we're doing or why we're doing it. It just kind of pours out of us, and it has an effect. It has an effect on others. It has an effect on us. But if we don't see the reason behind it, the intentions behind our actions, we don't see the habitual formations that are going on within us, we will cause suffering to others and suffering to ourselves. We will suffer. So I talk about the path of awakening quite a lot, whatever that means. I've got a lot of videos talking about what it means, but really it's about waking up from a life of a delusive habit, really, and waking into a life of spontaneity, freedom and availability. Now, living spontaneously is never the same as reacting with habit. It's never the same. So if we want to live a life of spontaneous freedom, then we need to see where our habits are sticking us, holding us back, making us react and respond in the same way again and again and again. Now I would say this is important whether you're, even if you're not on a spiritual journey, looking at your own habits can be really useful. But if you're on the path of awakening, looking at your habits from the very first moment you discover the path, for the rest of your life, at every single stage of realization, even in deep realization, it's important that we recognize where we're habitually stuck. And I say this because I see a lot of people, and I know in my own experience, that we might have deep realization into the nature of the way things are, you could say. And yet our habits are showing us where we're still operating maybe unconsciously in the world. So what habits should we look at? Well, I'd say always start with the simplest and the most obvious one first. And by doing this, by looking at habits, it just makes practice kind of easy, really. We don't need complicated, deep, esoteric practices to free us. We can just look at our day-to-day and say, where am I reacting and speaking habitually without much kind of awareness of what's going on? So the one that I see pretty much everybody engaged in, the habit, the deep habit, unconscious habit that I see everyone engaged in, including myself, is using smartphones. Now, I might make a video about that. I've already done so in the past, but yeah, we unconsciously check our phones all the time. We're just like, what? Maybe checking our pockets, always looking at our phone, habitually posting on social media, reading social media, scrolling, looking at news, whatever it is. But this is a habit, isn't it? It's often not done consciously with forethought and awareness. It just happens. Before we know it, we find ourselves deep in the rabbit hole of the internet and social media. So recognizing this habit can show us, actually I'm still stuck. And whilst I'm stuck to this habitual activity, I can't really be free. I can't be free to spontaneously respond to this unpredictable life, this moment by moment unfolding, if I'm chained to a habit of activity, a habit of looking at my phone, for instance. So if you notice that in yourself, then that's a great working ground to start with. You can say, okay, well, maybe I can work on that habit and recognize every time I reach for my phone. Every time my hand goes for my pocket, instead of just not knowing and finding ourselves online, we can go, oh, look, there it is. There's that urge. I'm trying to get to my phone. What is that saying? Where is it coming from? What's the feeling that precedes the habitual action? And just explore there. really simple. Another habit could be maybe responding to people or reacting to people with negativity or defensiveness. So it could be your partner or maybe your parents. They might apparently push our buttons, and before we know it, we're defending ourselves and maybe being a little bit mean-spirited, saying some insulting things to them, who knows. But it's just a habit often that's formed over many years of having to defend ourselves. So notice it. Notice where we're just unconsciously reacting in the world. And I guarantee if you do this, if you notice your habits, deeply get under the structure of your habits and feel what is driving your habits, you will feel more empowered, and also you'll open up to a deeper and deeper freedom. The liberation that is spoken about when people talk about awakening is liberation from habitual reactive responses and activity in the world. It's the ability to spontaneously be with life as life without really knowing what's going to happen, but trusting that it will happen just right. And we can never have that spontaneity, that freedom, if we're deeply mired in habitual responses.